less than a month till the transfer window is open again. And some clubs certainly in need of reinforcements. A lot of talk about Manchester United's midfield. Maybe something we'll touch on now with Alex Crook, whose transfer notebook is back up and running as we head towards January. Hi, Crookie.
Good afternoon. We good?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're going to start with Mo Salah. I mean, kind of looking a bit forlorn on the bench the other day, understandably, but I think most Liverpool fans probably argue it was the right move. They certainly got the result. There's been a lot of talk about him going to the Middle East. I mean, I suppose that chat will start again, won't it?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever really gone away, to be honest. Obviously, there was a lot of conjecture last season when his contract negotiations were going on. Ultimately, he decided to stay at Liverpool, signed a 2-year deal. But I think there was always a provision in there that maybe at some point in the not too distant future, he would make that move to Saudi Arabia. We know that Al Hilal retain an interest, and we know the Saudi Pro League are desperate to get him there as their sort of poster boy, Egyptian superstar. If his form doesn't improve, if he can't get his place back in the Liverpool team, then I would imagine that would accelerate. Not in January, but certainly next summer. I think this is going to be one to keep a very keen eye on. They mean business, don't they, again in Saudi Arabia, because they're trying to get Vinicius Junior from Real Madrid as well. That would be a world record pay packet, so even more than they're prepared to pay Mo Salah. So I think next summer we could be talking a lot about Saudi.
So there's no link between Semenyo possibly coming in January from Bournemouth and Salah going out. You feel he'll see the season out?
I think he will see the season out. Yeah, I think he'll want to do that. But in terms of a long-term replacement, Semenyo would tick a lot of boxes, wouldn't he? He can play in a similar role to Mo Salah. They're going to be big boots to fill, even if Salah isn't at the peak of his form at this moment in time. But Semenyo seems the type of character who would take that challenge on the chin. Don't rule out Manchester City, though, triggering that release clause in January, because I know Pep Guardiola is pretty concerned about the lack of goals coming from City's midfield, the over-reliance on Erling Haaland, and he sees someone in Semenyo who I think can come in and certainly get into double figures in that Manchester City team. So that's going to be one to keep an eye on when the window reopens in January.
He'd be a very good fit there. I mean, he'd be a very good fit at a lot of clubs, but you can certainly see it.
They've got a lot of attacking players, but I hear what Crookie's saying, definitely.
Now, from a Bournemouth fan's point of view, they don't want to hear that. They probably don't want to hear that Andoni Iraola has not sorted his future out yet. I mean, we saw the other day, he seems like a very affable guy, but I think he's facing his third touchline ban of the season, isn't he? So I think he does get quite spiky when he's out there, and he was very upset the other day with the way they threw that game away.
Yeah, I think it was a new record, wasn't it, for being 2 goals up and conceding 3 goals so quickly to lose a Premier League game. I'm there at the Vitality tonight. This one's live, I think, on the talkSPORT app against Everton, and their recent form has tailed off a bit. I think it's 1 point from the last 4 games, so they want to get back to winning ways. But in terms of Iraola, I know Bill Foley, the owner there, who's very ambitious, is desperate to tie him down to a new contract. But I think he might have to be patient with this one, because Iraola, as I understand it, prefers to make a decision about his future at the end of the season rather than mid-season. He usually likes to operate actually on 1-year rolling contracts. So it was a bit of a surprise to many who knew him when he signed a 2-year deal with Bournemouth back in 2024. That expires in the summer. And we could have a really interesting summer in terms of out-of-contract managers, because I think Oliver Glasner will leave Crystal Palace. I think his comments after the Manchester United game were almost paving the way for that. I'm still not convinced that Marco Silva stays at Fulham beyond the end of this season, and Iraola in a similar predicament.
I agree. And his stock's high, so, you've got to, for a manager, that isn't always the case.
That can soon change, can't it, as we've seen over the years. Now, we mentioned Manchester United's midfield, and there's a lot of talk about Baleba. There's Wharton, Elliot, Anderson have always been mentioned. We'll just try and get out your thoughts in a minute.
It's the area where the weakest, and for the whole thing to work, they need these sort of players, there's no question.
I mean, they do have a Uruguayan international in there, in Manuel Ugarte, but he doesn't seem to get a lot of game time, Crookie, does he?
No, he doesn't. And actually, he was one of the players that Ruben Amorim, along with Garnacho, singled out in the wake of the Europa League final debacle in Bilbao, and after finishing 16th last season, as someone who isn't playing to his top level. I don't think he's quite mobile enough for the Premier League, if I'm being honest. I don't think he's really got the legs to do that job in midfield, and he's only started 2 league games this season. His contract doesn't end till 2029, But I think if they can rebuild the midfield, and certainly that's the priority for next summer, then he is one they'd be willing to cash in on. In terms of who comes in, I think that's a fascinating question because Belieber was the main target in the summer. He was keen to make the move, but as I was saying at the time, Brighton had no inclination to sell. He's not having a great season. I think 4 times he's been taken off at half-time, Belieber, so maybe that speculation has affected him.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think it certainly has. And then you've got Elliot Anderson, who seems to be growing in confidence and stature. I think he's now down a place, definitely in the England squad, if not the first 11, come the World Cup next summer. Wharton is an interesting profile as well. To get any of those, I think United are going to have to pay a club record fee, but I think they're willing to do it because, as you guys have said, it's an area in the team they've not just neglected this season. I'd argue they've neglected it since Michael Carrick left the football club.
Now, it's interesting about who's the most gettable one maybe in the short term. Could Belieber move in January? I don't know.
I don't think so.
Exactly.
Well, only if Brighton think that he's not doing the business.
Yeah, and his head's
He'll
been...
have another one waiting round the corner.
Yeah, there'll be a flight from...
if they can get maximum
flight from Ecuador
money
for about 10pence. Elliot Anderson's an interesting one. If you're him, you probably don't want to move clubs at the moment. You know, you're in the box seat. You go to Manchester United. You might have a little period where you're not quite at it. And I think Tuchel is the sort of manager who'll say, well, if you're not doing it at league level, then you're not going to be starting games. So that feels like a summer move, doesn't it, if it's going to happen?
Yeah, I think in all likelihood, any of those 3 big expensive players that we talked about, it's not the type of deal that gets done in January, unless they happen to have a Semenyo-type release clause, which I don't believe they do. And in terms of Anderson, why would he risk his World Cup place by leaving mid-season? He starts week in, week out for Forest. They've improved under Sean Dyche. I think he'd be well advised to stay where he is. And actually, I think Forest would push quite hard to keep him, even if offers do come in January, because he's so important to what they're trying to do in terms of Premier League survival, which I think they'll probably achieve quite easily, but in terms of going deep in Europe as well.
Finally, we're going to talk to Chris Kirkland in a minute, and we were going to bring this up. He's been the number 2 keeper at a big club, and he knows what it's like. James Trafford, there's some stories today that he could want away. I mean, he obviously went into City feeling like he was going to be contesting the number 1 shirt, and then they signed Donnarumma, and that was that. I mean, some clubs, you have kind of joint number 1s like they kind of do at Newcastle, but this is not the case at City, clearly, is it?
Yeah, I don't know if that ever really works, though, does it?
No.
I think, if you're a defender, you need to know who the goalkeeper's going to be, and I think it didn't do Aaron Ramsdale's confidence any good at Arsenal when David Raya came in, and Mikel Arteta sort of tried that, didn't he, rotating the 2 goalkeepers, and in the end he settled on Raya. I feel for James Trafford because he left Manchester City once before, went out and built his reputation as a very dependable goalkeeper with what he did in the Championship at Burnley last season, and he went back there believing he would be the number 1, and he would have been had the chance to sign Gigi Donnarumma not come up, because I don't think that was something Manchester City were planning for, but they saw it as an opportunity they simply couldn't pass up. There's no question in my mind that Donnarumma at this stage is a better goalkeeper than Trafford, so I think he does need to go out in January. He wants to go out in January. There's interest from Wolves as well as several clubs in Europe, but I think City's preference at the moment would be to move on Stefan Ortega and keep Trafford as understudy to Donnarumma. If he doesn't go, I think it's hard to make a case for him being on the plane for England come the World Cup.
That would seem unfair, really, on him. The whole thing seems unfair, that they got him in and then they signed somebody else,
I mean, ironically...
He's got a chance to go somewhere else.
If Donnarumma gets booked tonight, then... Was it tonight or tomorrow they're playing City? I'm trying to think.
He's on 4.
Yeah, I mean, if he
tonight,
gets...
isn't it? Fulham
that's right.
Tonight.
Of course. If he gets another booking, I think he does need to become the first Premier League keeper to get five yellow cards and get a ban for it. And he'd probably get a game then, wouldn't he? So this is his opportunity.
It'd only be one game.
He would, but again, a bit like when Ramsdale came in cup games last season, there's so much pressure then on James Trafford to deliver that it can almost have the adverse effect, can't it?
No, that's very true. Cheers, Cookie. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.